Wow.
Wow. Okay. Well, I guess we are live. I'm seeing the end of the intro. It's a little delayed on my computer. I'll slide over here so I'm outside of the boxes that you have. I can see you two gentlemen. Lovely to be here. We're just about 30 minutes from sunset here. Hello, Kevin. Hello, Kirk. Here in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So. But it is past sunset in Jerusalem, so we are good to go for Passover.
Where your heart is.
I said that we would begin with a little Passover here. I've got, as you can see, my lamb and my matzah. Leah made the matzah very
good
from scratch earlier today. We of course have the olive oil and bitter herbs ready to go. And I know that the wine is not a specified ingredient, but it is certainly
I think it's a good choice.
It is certainly an implied ingredient to be part of this. So we're ready to go. And oh goodness gracious, we have
we got a suit on.
Yeah,
Wookie's showtime suit.
Yeah, Wookie's got his showtime suit on. So we are ready. Now, this is actually part 2 of this special edition of the 22nd Mizmor and Dowd's fulfillment of Pesach, Matzah Bikurym. And I thought that the first episode of it, although Wookie didn't seem to be quite as excited about it as Wookie, that's my Passover. I will give you some.
I wondered how that was going to work.
Yes, I do. I want you in Shamaim. You're a good guy, and of course we got Asher right here too, that's trying to horn in on the treats. But that first episode was really profound in a lot of ways. I teed it up. I wrote about it a long time ago for Coming Home. It's volume 3. I guess not that long ago, probably 6 months ago or so is when I completed volume 3 of Coming Home, which is where the 22nd Mizmor was presented.
Yes.
The difference. What is he going to go for now? Is he going to go for the Wookiee on the screen? Is he going to go for the olive oil and the bitter herbs? Is he going to go for the lamb, the matzah, or the wine?
Go for the wine.
Well, I think if I were betting,
money's on the lamb. But
I'd bet on the lamb if we got a bet going.
Okay, well, we'll see. At this point, he feels right at home, obviously. But there was something profound, actually, about that presentation, fellas, that I did not anticipate when we teed it up, and that's part of the benefit, the value, if you will, of doing these as live streams, like we're doing again now, is that sometimes things just come to you as you're reading the material and sharing it, and the insight that came from the last presentation, the one earlier today, is that there's a reason that Dowd begins his presentation of Chag Matzah with a question, and there's a reason that he begins talking almost exclusively, in fact, exclusively, about his fulfillment of Matzah and not Pesach. And the conclusion that I had on this is that even though in the chronological order, it's obviously Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurym.
Sure.
And so you would think that if you're just going to do it as he experienced them, because he's providing an eyewitness to what he has in fact done, that he would go through it and present Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurym, but he doesn't. That opening line, and I'll share it in a moment because it bears repeating, isn't about Pesach. It's entirely and completely about matzah. And so he asked the question not about Pesach, but about matzah. And it just dawned on me as I was reading it, there's a reason for that, and that is that if you're not prepared to answer the question as to why God distanced himself from Dowd at this moment pertaining to matzah, you ought not even consider Pesach.
Mm-hmm.
Pesach is
deadly.
That was it for the Wookiee. Pesach. Well, no, it's going to make you. It's going to make you immortal.
That's what. Well, I'm sorry, but
immortal is immortal,
but immortal separated from YAHOWah. an immortal azab. And
Yes.
so what Dowd is saying is, until you can answer the question as to why God had separated himself from Dowd at the moment of the fulfillment of Matzah, don't even begin to think about Pesach. Now, of course, this is the opposite of what Jews do when they celebrate Passover.
Mm-hmm.
They go right into Passover without any thought for matzah. In fact, they never actually come to any understanding of what matzah represents. They don't even acknowledge it anymore. All matzah is an ingredient on their plates. In fact, they'll set all of their little veggies and gefilte fish and what else.
Nice brisket.
They'll set it on top of a manufactured, of course, rabbinic blessed piece of matzah out of a box. They don't get what I get, which is matzah made by my wife, fresh. I saw her actually putting it all together just a few hours ago. I ate it fresh right out of the skillet as she was making it. But they literally go to Passover without any thought of matzah. And what Dowd is saying is just the opposite. Until you can contemplate and understand all the ramifications associated with what's taking place on matzah, don't even think about Passover.
Right.
Brilliant, really, in the way that he went about it. I'm kind of embarrassed that it took me 24 years to figure it out. But,
Right.
but,
It's
but
been
here
there
we,
the whole time. Yeah.
but here we are on Passover, and
Mm-hmm.
we finally figured out why he's talking about the matzah, this bread without the fungus of yeast, before we even proceed with an understanding of what this lamb represents. And I'm going to tell you that, gentlemen, there's going to be a point in this show where I'm going to start.
I was wondering how long it was going to.
Well, I'll eat my crackers out of the box. Kevin can take over.
Yeah, I was told that there's lots of cooking shows, but no eating shows. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, that's...
Here we go.
Yeah,
Eat
here
away.
we go. Yeah.
Break some
YAHOWAH
ground, yeah.
I was going to have a eating show because it's Passover,
Mhm.
and it's a celebration of a meal. So here it is again, and I want you to think about it, and I want you to also to recognize why rabbis and why Christians ignore the 22nd Mizmor. And the reason they both ignore it, well, first, for a Christian point of view, it begins with these words: a song of Dowd.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So when it's spoken in first person, like the next word is my, it doesn't work for Christianity very well, does it? In fact, it's unbelievably destructive for Christianity. And the fact that it actually is descriptive of crucifixion being the mode of death on Passover for the lamb, it's even worse. For the rabbis, they have another problem, and that is they can't fathom that they missed the realization that Dowd in 33 CE fulfilled Passover. So since they can't fathom that he would have done that, and they deny that he would have had a second life to do that, they won't even give him the third life to come back, and they won't even acknowledge matzah even exists, and there's no conversation of Bikurym. They want to skip right over it.
Mhm.
So when we say that we were the first to correctly translate this and explain it and derive insights from it, well, the fact is we didn't have much competition.
Still.
It really brings us right back to being chosen as the Choder and as Dowd's Bashar and the like. There wasn't any competition.
Right.
So, I'm still honored to have the job, but
Sure.
still, in this case, we are the first to figure it out because we were the first to want to figure it out and have an open mind regarding it. So it's a song of Dowd, and it begins, my God, and then there's an interrogatory. Ma is an interrogatory in Hebrew. It can mean for what reason, for how long, to what end, and it's not necessarily even Dowd asking the question. It's just that he's saying, my God, and then there's a question being posed as for what reason, for how long, and to what end. have you in this moment separated yourself from me, abandoned me, relinquished our relationship, if you will, for a moment, separated from me. And it was written in the call perfect, which means that it is something that would be finite in time, literal in interpretation, finite in time. And the only really rational interpretation of this, because here Dowd is writing about something that he is witnessing 1,000 years in his future. So that's profound by itself. And not only is he writing about something that he would endure 1,000 years in his future, he's explaining the nuances of it. So as a prophet, having volunteered to fulfill Pesach, Matzah Bikurym, which is amazing in itself that he would figure out that he was the right person to do it, come to God with the proposition, it's right for me to do it, have God agree that, yes, it is the right call for you to endure these 2 very hellish days for the respect that you will earn and the benefit that you will derive for all eternity. And that's amazing enough, but there's no chance that he was allowed to, first of all, that he figured out why he should do it. And if he figured out why he should do it, is there any chance that he didn't know why he was doing it? I mean, no. There is no chance he could not know why God was separating himself from him at this moment where his nephesh soul goes to the place of separation, which is Sheol, and have volunteered to do this.
Yeah, that's for us.
You're right about it. So he obviously knew the answer. So he's asking the question for us, posing the question for us. And if we don't know the answer, it should be a full stop, and you don't even consider Passover. That's the point of this. Then the next statement doubles down on it, as does the following one. Far, exceedingly remote in distance and time, separated in space, no longer in a close perceived relationship, distant, sent far off, away from my liberation and deliverance, are the words of my anguished groaning. So, and even the anguished groaning here is the roar of a lion, and Dowd represents the Lion of Judah. So he is in the furthest place that he can be right now from Yahweh. So he's opening, talking about being in the place of separation on Matzah, which is Sheol. You cannot be more distant or remote from God than that. And at that moment, he is saying that the distance is also from his liberation and deliverance, because while he's in that environment in the black hole, he can't even perceive how he's going to be liberated from it. As a matter of fact, in a black hole, the noise would be so deafening, the pressures would be so stifling, the heat, all of it would be so immense that even protected as he was by the set-apart spirit, it is still an anguished experience. Now, the other thing that I deduced earlier today that I thought is worth repeating now is that since Yahowah said specifically that his spirit was coming on Dowd and did when he was anointed at 8 years of age, and we're told specifically at that time, my spirit would never leave him. Never means never. Mm-hmm. So when Dowd came back and arrived at the timing that he said he would to fulfill Passover, when he was with Daniel as Gabriel and told him precisely when he would arrive to the day to fulfill Pesach, Matzah Bikurym, that means that on that corporeal body that Yahweh created for Dowd's nephesh soul to reside in, for him to fulfill Passover as the lamb, that body was imbued with Yahweh's spirit. So he had the support, the guidance, and the protection of the spirit at that time. But once Dowd's body is discarded now, and he is in Sheol, fulfilling matzah, does it not mean that the set-apart spirit has to be the shield that he spoke of? Because he speaks specifically of being protected in this terribly dark place by a shield. Therefore, the set-apart spirit is the shield. Mm-hmm. And yet he's saying, God, you're nowhere to be found. You are as distant from me as you could possibly be. So what is the derived meaning from all of that? The Spirit never left me. The Spirit is the shield, even in Sheol. And he's announcing, God, why are you so distant from me? Is that the set-apart spirit represents very, very, very little of God. Mm-hmm. It's just a tool that God is using either to provide protection, in the case of Dowd here, provide enlightenment, as the Spirit does for the Choder, certainly did for Dowd. Helps us process information, I think, more effectively. But the set-apart spirit, under this basis for these words to be true, can't be really any more Yahowah than the Malach that work for him. I mean, it's a supercharged version, if you will, but this makes that revolting mother goddess cult that broke ranks and decided they would have their mommy dearest cult. It makes that absolutely absurd, because you can't turn the Ruach into a maternal version of God. You can't give her a separate role as a god or goddess,
right?
Under these circumstances,
right?
The 22nd Mizmor completely destroys that possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's important, because God presents himself always in the masculine, and here Dowd, who is being protected by the Spirit, says God's nowhere to be found at this point, because he's in the place of separation from God. So I thought that was also a fairly profound insight. And then it goes on to say, and this is also a fairly profound insight, my God, I am appointed to call out and continually proclaim the summons to make this invitation known. So Dowd is announcing the invitation to his own fulfillment of Chag Matzah. That's what he's saying. I'm announcing that I have chosen to fulfill this mikra. Kara is the actionable root of mikra. So in the midst of this, I'm calling this out. I'm making this summons, this invitation to you to capitalize on what I've done. All you need to do is respond. And he says, and it's on this day. No, but you don't answer. And I've said that you can make you, capital U, and say, God does not answer. But God's not even hearing this because they're separated, right?
Yes.
So the one that is you do not answer, it's his people. We're talking about Israelites. We're talking about Yehudim. That Yahweh, that Dowd is fulfilling matzah. He's offered the invitation to capitalize on what he's done, because matzah takes our guilt, religious and political guilt, Dowd carries it into Sheol to deposit it there. And what Dowd is saying, I did this for you. I summoned you to take advantage of it, but you don't answer.
Wow.
That's the greatest pain of all. It's the greatest indignity of all. The greatest disappointment of all. You want to, if it wasn't for the fact that our job is to love them back into the covenant, your first inclination here would be to, what's wrong with you, Israel? Look what you did to the very Son of God. Look what you did to your Savior. Look what you did to God. Look what you did to yourselves. He invited you to capitalize upon this opportunity to remove the fungus of yeast representing religion and politics from your souls. And I did this for you, and you didn't even bother to respond. That's what's being conveyed here. And oh my God, is that powerful. Man, I read it this morning or this afternoon and shared these insights. And Leah got up. I thought it was just to go cry. I mean, because it is so enormously sad for Dowd, for God, for Israel. And it's worse than this. He did this. He offered the invitation to this, and rabbis replaced him with a false Messiah. And another rabbi created the myth of Jesus Christ to replace him. What could be more reprehensible? As my wife constantly says, Israel, you need to get over yourselves. You just need to get over yourselves. Stop it already. What you're doing is repulsive. It's worse than the meltdown at the waters of Meribah. Please, just stop it already. Been abusive of your Messiah and King for so long. He says, during this long absence of light, and for a better part of 2,000 years, there has been this long absence of life and light. Children of Israel have been living in spiritual darkness, unwilling to say Yahweh's name, unwilling to admit that Dowd is their Messiah, that he's the Son of God, or that he fulfilled Pesach, Matzah Bikurym, even unwilling to admit that Matzah exists. So there is no relief for Dowd because he did this and there was the expectation of rest, but there's been nothing but silence. Mizmor Psalm 22, too. It's a exceedingly poignant beginning to this prophecy under this prophetic portrayal of Passover under these circumstances. So projecting his thoughts towards his father and recognizing that they are now on opposite sides of the universe, Dowd reminisced. Yahweh, you're set apart. You're living to establish the renown and reputation of Israel. Here's Dowd enduring all of this, and he said, listen, I get it. You didn't respond to me. I gave you the invitation. I suffered this way. You can't answer the question that I asked you as to why there is the separation now. But I understand that Yahweh's focused on the big picture, that he exists set apart, living to establish the renown and reputation of Israel. God wants his people back. His people have to get over themselves. They have to get past themselves. So, this is all true. Yahweh is set apart from all things perverted and common, and thus from religion. The fungus could not be born by Yahweh under these circumstances because he's set apart from it. And if Dowd is saying, Yahweh, you're set apart from all of this, it means that during the years that I didn't know that Dowd fulfilled it, and I was trying to come up with some way that this was actually fulfilled and projected the idea that Yahweh used his nefesh soul and like an avatar and put it into a physical person and then did this way. Well, that's not even feasible under these circumstances. Yahweh, you're set apart. You're trying to establish the living reputation of Israel, trying to bring Israel back to life, trying to establish the reputation of your people who, have been so bad they deny that I'm the Messiah. They deny that I'm returning king. They deny matzah. They deny that we did these things together. There is, of course, no better news or greater gift when Dowd carried the covenant family's guilt with him on his nefesh into Sheol, leaving it there. Our souls were unleavened. That is why this is unleavened bread. It's the thing that is removed from it is the fungus of yeast. And the reason we eat it with the olive oil and the bitter herbs is to have some appreciation for the suffering that Dowd's nefesh soul went through to make this possible, and then endured afterwards, where he was embittered when his people didn't respond. And then the oil, of course, is the source of enlightenment, the source of healing, the source of so many things that are so essential to Israel, the very harvest of the olives, the longest living tree, deeply rooted and enduring in the land. And it is an oil which is only possible when the olives are crushed, as the most important olive to ever lived was crushed in Sheol for the benefit of the covenant family. So in this way, the covenant's children are presentable. We're ready for adoption because we are immortal via Pesach, but we're purged of all of our guilt on Matzah, which makes Bikurym possible as the firstborn, the Bikur of YAHOWAH. Dowd initiates Bikurym, the firstborn children, for us to follow. So this is what Matzah facilitates, making it essential for those who want to live. And, for the Yehudim that are celebrating Passover, and most will do it tomorrow night, for them, since they don't celebrate Matzah, to the degree they celebrate Passover correctly, they're damning their souls to hell.
Yeah.
Because they'll become immortal and unperfected. They have to be separated from God because God is set apart. That's really a very important part of what Dowd just communicated to us. Well, also relevant is that Yahweh does not want to be worshipped or obeyed, but instead, as our Father, he wants to reestablish the reputation of his family. Do you hear what Dowd said? You're set apart, and you're living to establish the reputation of Yisrael. There is no religion where the deity in that religion says, this isn't about me.
Right.
It's about you. Isn't that profound? Yeah, Yahweh's not saying, hey, give me credit, worship me, praise me, bow down to me, all that kind of thing. No, he's saying exactly the opposite. We're doing this so I can lift you up, so I can improve your reputation, because right now your reputation is really crappy.
Right.
Reputation of Israel, right from the time of Abraham, and he picked the perfect guy to kick this off. So, and it didn't get much better. In fact, I'm not sure it got any better with Jacob, and it certainly didn't get better with his kids. If you read what they did, and it only got worse during the Exodus. I mean, they were never anything but irascible. And so what Yahweh was saying, you got a really crappy reputation. And then all the time that Israel existed, all the time that Yehudah existed, all the time you were in diaspora, you constantly were religious, you were constantly political, you constantly ignored and erased my name. You've got a really terrible reputation. And look what these religions that you enabled to grow up in your midst have done to besmirch you. So, yeah, you need to have your reputation improved. So even before we realize that this is Dowd fulfilling Chak Matzah, this statement, of course, is devastating for Christianity because it means that the Passover lamb was enduring this sacrifice not on behalf of a Gentile church, not on behalf of Christians. The Son knew that he was doing this to enhance Israel's reputation. The very people that the Christian New Testament besmirched. I mean, they even said, hey, you crucified our God. Of course, it wasn't true, But the whole idea is they dehumanized them, they devalued them, they demonized Jews. And here we find exactly the opposite. He just said, Yahweh, not Jesus, Yahweh. You live to restore the reputation and the renown of Israel. That's why I say that for those who think that they're going to embark on Shabuah, and they call it, that's our harvest, and they're a goy, they really have some thinking to do here, because the fact of the matter is, you're not going to avail yourself of Pesach or Matzah or Bikurym if you're not integrated into the life of Israel. It's Israel's reputation that is being restored. And we can be Israel. We can be individuals who engage and endure with God. We can be grafted into Israel. And until we are, then our reputation isn't among those being restored. And if you aren't integrated into Yahweh's love for and compassion for and focus on Israel, you got no business here on Passover or on yeasted bread. So here, the next statement affirms this, that the focus is on the covenant, on Israel. In you, speaking to Yahweh, our fathers relied. They trusted, and you continually rescued them. Well, that was true with Abraham. It was true to a significant degree with Yitzhak. It was true to some degree with Jacob. And it was absolutely true during the Exodus. And so Dowd is keeping it in the family. The focus is on the reputation of Israel. It's Yahweh who's doing this. He's living to restore the reputation of Israel. And, oh, by the way, we're focused on our fathers, and our fathers, he's a Yehud. His fathers would be Yehudim. They're Jews. And it is Jews that Yahweh, according to Dowd, constantly rescued, and with the Torah and prophets affirm. So the king of Israel, Dowd, was serving his people, and those would be Israelites. He was not here to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurym to serve Goy. Doesn't preclude Goy for taking it, part of it, but you've got to come through the same Torah, accept the same 5 conditions of the covenant, and attend the Moed Mikre in an understanding that it is Yahweh and Dowd who enabled these things in accordance with the Torah's instructions. And if you can't process all of that, you've got no business here. And you got no business with God. So after uniting and defending Israel in his first life, Dowd would restore them to fellowship by making them perfect and immortal children of God in his second life. And in this way, Yah was consistent. When we rely, he delivers. In his third life, he gets to be the sovereign of these people that he has just saved. Now, unfortunately, it has been a long, long time since Israel cried out to Yahweh. And yet, on this side of the Exodus, and with the Torah before us, the first step home begins by summoning Yahweh by name. It requires answering the question, why were Dowd at that moment and Yahweh separated? It requires answering the invitation and the summons that Dowd has laid out there for us. So this is not an academic exercise for the Messiah. He was going to be imprisoned within the most extreme manifestation of Mitzrayim, the crucibles of religious and political oppression, imaginable. And as the plural YM contraction of my, to consider the implications of Sarah being confined and anguished Yahweh's liberation of the children of Israel enslaved in Mitzrayim serves to foreshadow what God would do with and for his son. So in his plea, Dowd is identifying with Yisrael again, and with their most magnificent moment in all of history. He reminds us, to you, speaking to Yahweh, they cried out for help, and they were delivered. In you they trusted and relied, and they were not disappointed or disapproved, although they were pretty disappointing. Mizmor, Psalm 22:5. So he's now doing something that I also think is quite important, fellas.
Mm-hmm.
He's tying this fulfillment of Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurym to another time. And what is that time? To the time they were taken out of Mitzrayim and the Exodus, when we're introduced to the concept of Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurym, because Pesach was the moment the children of Israel were affirmed that they would live, and when on Matzah they withdrew from religious and political oppression.
Mm-hmm.
To cross the Red Sea at the Gulf of Aqaba and the Weeba Beach crossing, the land bridge there, the Weeba Beach, and find themselves the living exemplars of Bikurym, firstborn children. This is what happened, and so Dowd is equating Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurym to what occurred, in his case, 400 years earlier. Now, as mentioned, Dowd's declaration goes way back, all the way back to the Yatsa Exodus. He was putting his sacrifice in the context of history and his people's experience when Yahweh delivered and saved them from religious and political oppression, as well as slavery, the control of others. So the lesson is twofold. First, Yahweh came with Moshe to deliver the children of Israel from the torment of civilization, of being abused and worked to death by authoritarian religious and political regimes. And while their lives were spared on Pesach, they were liberated from the controlling influence of religion and politics in Egypt during Matzah. So again, he's emphasizing Matzah. Second, their preferential circumstances would be, well, very short-lived, and that is made evident by the perfect conjugation. The Israelites, unfortunately, bonded with their captors in the Stockholm experience, and they took their preferences for false gods with them. They weren't in this a week across the Gulf of Aqaba before they were making the golden calf.
Right.
So these are Dowd's thoughts as he was completing his service during the expression of Chag Matzah. Each word should be understood in the context of Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurym 400 years earlier. The Moed was and remains the doorway through which we can escape the deadly consequence of religious and political corruption. And on the other side is the Promised Land. Passover is the portal to a new life, particularly with the threshold of Matzah. It is perfect and it's eternal. Those allowed to pass through it en route to unyeasted bread cross that threshold of perfection. Well, we're never disappointed. That is the means that God has to adopt us. So while Dowd volunteered for it to matter, Yahweh would have to allow his son's soul to be separated in our stead for our benefit in the process of carrying our guilt away. We do not, of course, understand the full mechanisms of how a nephesh soul enveloped in and protected by the ruach could enter what is the equivalent of a black hole, and now you're dealing there with now two non-material entities. So these two entities are akin to light, if you will, at this point. But what we know about a soul is that it has no mass. You know, when a person goes from living to not living, and if they were to, then they've tried to weigh them precisely, they know that that is the point where their soul departs. But there's no change in mass. And so the soul is not a form of energy because they can't detect the energy. It isn't a form of mass because they can't weigh that and distinguish it either. So there's something very unique about the nature of a soul, and something very unique about the nature of the Ruach. You know, I've got the 7 Ruach of YAHOWAH operating within me, and while I benefit from them, you know, I don't get tingly all over and, you know, and itch and say, well, okay, there was a Ruach there. No, you know, yeah, it's not the way that you're not sensing the presence of energy. It's helping the neurons in the brain to fire more effectively. But so it is technically possible for a soul that has no quantifiable energy trace, no mass, to enter into a black hole, if that's how Sheol really exists, and protected by the Spirit, be able to be withdrawn. So it's just an interesting thing. Well, I'm not going to claim that I understand the mechanics. You know, I don't. I'm not that smart. But the how of this is really so unimportant.
Yeah.
Compared to the who and the why of it.
It's my third question I ask when I get time to ask a question of Yah. It's not the first thing I'm going to ask. Not something I spend a lot of time on.
No, I'm not sure that I even want to know on this one. There are a lot of things I want to know.
Yeah.
You know, why can't if you're going to create the platypus as what you do, then why didn't you at least give it wings so it could fly? I mean, that might be my first question. Probably not. No, you know, I think if I were to think of a first question, because it's just an interesting thing here, because this is the whole purpose of Pesach, Matzah Bikurym is to bring us into Yahweh's presence as His children. Is the first thing I would do is probably going to ask for constructive criticism. You know,
the job I just did. Can you tell me how? Because I might do it again. Really?
Well, yeah. Well, it's not the whole thing, but clearly we have an ongoing job, and you can learn from your past experience.
Sure.
Yeah. What is it that we may have that I may have stumbled on that I could have done better? But I think more important than that is, okay, so we've come to know the whole picture from beginning to end, and every day we're taking just nuances of it and shades and elements of it and contours of it and adding to what we know, just as we did today. Mm-hmm. And so maybe the better phrasing would be, okay, we've come to 10,000 unique insights and revelations. That's a lot. Pretty cool. Thank you for all that.
Right.
10,000 more than anybody else, guys.
What did we miss?
Yeah.
What did we miss?
Because a great big scroll.
Yeah, well, it might take 10 years. You'll have to excuse me if I monopolize. Yeah, it's time for a while.
Well, with it written on it, it's kind of a data download.
I miss, so. but nonetheless, I think that's my most interesting question is, with all the things that we came up with, what did we miss, and what could we have done better, knowing that we're going to have a teaching job going forward, because we are saving a mortal remnant of Yisrael. And in addition to that, there will be Goyim who will survive Yahweh's return, but not in His presence, that will be the workers of the millennial Shabat.
Right.
And they're going to need to know what they can and can't do. And so somebody has to guide them. And there'll be the children of Israel, who are this, mortal remnant of God's people, the longest any one of them is going to know the truth is 10 days.
Wow.
And of that 10 days, you're going to have Elia there. He's a pretty darn good teacher. I pretty much shot my wad.
Right.
I'm over and done. But there'll be a legacy of what we've learned and taught. And so when we start the celebration of Sukkah, or even just we begin on Yom Kippurim, I mean, there's so much to teach these youngins, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's our job. So it would be nice to get a briefing from YAHOWAH. What did we miss? Right. What could we have done better? Because we're going to have this job at least for 1,000 years.
Right.
The job of helping to raise these young people, and they're not all young, but they are in spiritual age, so that they're equipped to live in God's presence. They don't really go and do, because it's possible that
stupid thing.
Somebody that mortal remnant could do a dunderhead move, and in fact, there's even evidence of that some will, and so we need to do our job and make sure that
be very diligent.
Some form of the Loe needs to exist.
Yeah. So since this is written by Dowd to describe what he endured on our behalf, let's acknowledge something that is equally important. By misappropriating the promises and accolades that YAHOWAH afforded Dowd for what he has achieved, and transferring them to the counterfeit Mr. Christ, Christians do the Father and the Son, as well as Yisrael, a grave injustice. I don't think you could do anything that would be more antagonizing of God, unless it were to parade around under the religious symbol of a dead God on a stick.
Pretty gross.
Pretty gross. Yeah. First, you robbed God's beloved Son, who we even call beloved. I mean, his name is beloved. God's beloved Son goes and does the most amazing sacrifice and gift to give you life. He invites you to take advantage of it, and you spit in his face. And then you parade around with the image of a dead God on a stick because you've got a fake version. It's not good for Christianity, and it's not good for Judaism, because Christianity doesn't exist without Paul being being trained as a rabbi, and the rabbis were worse because they not only ignored what Dowd told them he was going to do and when he was going to do it, but 100 years later, 2 Yobels distant, they foist a false Messiah on the world to hide again the reality of Dowd's achievements. It's such a shame. Leah keeps on saying, you just got to get over yourselves, Jews. You just need to stop. So by misappropriating the promises, all they did is made an enemy of God, both Jews and Christians. And we lose sight of Dowd's heroics. We devalue all Yah sought to accomplish through his beloved Son. And this psalm exists to explain, when, why, by and for whom the Passover and Matzah sacrifices were being made to deliver Bikurym. So let's be clear. This was tremendously painful. That's part of the 22nd Psalm, I've got to tell you, guys, that I'm not crazy about. Because the story here is that the beast of Rome that did this to Dowd is a corporeal manifestation of the same adversary that gets to do it to me, as the Adama Parah, and this is really gruesome. So it's not, listen, no one will ever have to do what he did on Matzah. So when Dowd gets beyond Matzah and it goes back and says, okay, let's just Passover, but there is somebody that has to endure on Passover Part 2 on Torah.
Right.
That's why the toabah, that crimson grub, is thrown into the mix by Elia to say these two things are related. That's why the wood is there to tie in with what happened with the dress rehearsal of Passover on Mount Moriah with Abraham and Ishak, and again with Dowd being nailed to that upright pole, and then the funeral pyre of wood that is arranged for the anima parah. So, Mizmor Psalm 22 is going to go into great detail about the most torturous elements that Dowd suffered. It was the end of a very long day. Our king had been through the pretense, likely, of a trial. We don't know how much of what is recorded is true, but we will assume that the likelihood is that Jews may have gotten involved. They would have. Clearly, he was spit upon, he was beaten, he was whipped by the Romans, who had invaded his home. He was in the city of Dowd.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The one thing about Dowd doing this that is so different, by the way, than anyone else is that there's only one reason that the Romans would have crucified someone in 33 CE in Judea. That person would have had to have some legitimate claim to being a king.
Yeah.
Well, pretend Jesus doesn't have any such claim.
Right.
But guess who does? Yeah, Dowd could say, hey, man, not only am I the king.
It's my land.
This is my country. You're invading my country. I am king. In fact, you're in my city. This is the city of Dowd.
Right.
And oh, by the way, once you're all done with your charade here, I'm coming back and I'm going to completely annihilate you and everything that you become going forward in the future. Yeah, Dowd's not going to lie to him.
Yeah.
Are you king? Damn right I'm king.
Uh-huh.
I'm king of this place. And I'm soon enough, I'll be king of the world. In fact, of the entire universe. So, okay, that would pretty much get the Romans to say, all right, crucifixion is probably scheduled. Are they going to say, oh, we wash our hands of this, I find no guilt in him? No. No. The body that God's ruach and that Dowd's nephesh occupied, of course, it suffered and bled beyond our comprehension in humanly designed Roman flagella, these whips that have fragments of bone and steel, not steel, but iron, metal in them. They're all designed so that rather than just the whips that bruise the flesh, these are designed to rip the flesh off the body.
Yeah.
They actually go in there and they will tear at the soft tissues underneath the backs and legs. I mean, this was the most beastly empire in the history of humanity, and they caused the lamb to die in an excruciating and humiliating way. And therefore, we finally now transition to Pesach. And if I may, to the lamb. Now that Dowd has established what we need to know about matzah. I am but a tola. I am but a crimson grub, the bloodied worm, a scarlet pulp. I had forgotten, fellas, and sometimes it's, you don't know until you know.
Mm-hmm.
I had always read this and said, all right, well, the Torah, there's lots of reasons for it. One is that they beat Dowd with these Roman whips to the point that he was just a bloody mess. And okay, that's true. And then I said, okay, well, this grub was used as a form of scarlet as a dye to create the
I mean, yeah.
robes and the tunics, the togas worn by the Roman legions that were there to subjugate God's people. That's not the reason it's listed first. When we read about the story of the anima para, what's the first thing that's tossed into that top of his deceased body?
The Towrah? Yeah.
Same thing. Yep. It's Dowd's way of saying, this is first, but it won't be the last.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to make a connection between these things. I want you to know that what I did is going to be done again, and it's being done by my herald. And I don't think I would have had any appreciation for this until we read in Yeshayah that after orchestrating the Shabuah and Teruah harvest, the Katsir and the gleaning, Lakat, that I'm particularly leaving behind and then protecting a remnant of Yisrael mortals, and then offering myself as the Adamah Parah to restore them. And then that takes you, of course, to Numbers 19, where the story of the Adamah Parah is told. And you read the story, and you read the benefit of the adulterous woman that is being restored to be betrothed to Dowd, the returning king. And, it takes your breath away. And then you see Tola there. And you remember, oh my God, this is the exact same thing that I read in the 22nd Mizmor as Dowd's preparing us for the physical beating that he would take. He's finished now with matzah, at least for the moment, and he's bringing us back to the gruesomeness of this beating on Pesach, and he's equating it to what the Adamah Parah is going to do when it's beaten by the corporeal manifestation of Hasatan. And he says, I no longer even exist as a person. The only thing that's left of Dowd now is his soul. I just no longer exist as a person. And in a way, he's also not existing as a person because now he's representing the Lamb, and he's full into Lamb mode. Mm-hmm. And he says, I'm rebuked, I'm taunted, I'm insulted, and I'm dishonored by humankind. I'm disrespected and demeaned even by the family. This tears your heart out, doesn't it? You've got the Son of God, the Messiah, the King of Yisrael, in his city, here, deciding that he is going to tell the set-apart spirit, let him do this. I volunteered to do this, and he's allowing these disgusting, arrogant invaders to dishonor him and rebuke him, to insult him, to taunt him. And then he says, I'm also disrespected and demeaned.
It goes further than just not appreciating. It's not just not appreciate. It's, now you're going to steal everything I did and give it to somebody else that you create,
And it's one thing for him to say, okay, you've made me inhuman with what you've done to me. Mm-hmm. And these Romans rebuked and taunted and insulted and dishonored me. But that's not the worst part. I've been disrespected and demeaned by my own family. There are Jews in Judah.
Yeah.
There are far more Jews in Judah than there were Romans in Judah. And not one of them respected what Dowd was doing there. Well, there may have been a few. The Ibanon may have respected what he was doing, but as a whole, no. The people who are kin and family see me as worthless. They have no regard for what I have done. I think that may have been the greatest agony of figuring this out, that Dowd served as the Passover lamb. It was, this was the insight. Well, I think in fact, I know it's the greatest insight and discovery that we have made, and maybe the greatest insight and discovery in human history, that Dowd, the king of Israel, in his second of 3 lives, served as the Passover lamb and fulfilled matzah. It is not an insight, though, that brings joy. It brings great sadness. Right. And the great sadness is that the great suffering of Dowd was that he was disrespected and demeaned by his own kin, and is to this day. They don't respect what he did. They don't value what he did. They deny what he did. And the agony of that is what is so excruciating. And I suspect that if we can retain this point of view, where Dowd is saying, "Yeah, I've been rebuked and taunted and insulted and dishonored by by humankind, and that's what the Romans are doing to me and my city and my country," where if I were to invoke my God's vengeance upon them, I could incinerate all of them in an instant. But I'm letting them do this with their disgusting egos. But it's my own people who are disrespecting and demeaning me. And I want you to hold on to that thought, because on our other series, which is the story of the Towrah and the man from Edom, in the 14th Mizmor, where Dowd dedicates an entire song to what we are doing on his behalf to restore his reputation with his people, and to let Israel know that their Messiah fulfilled Pesach, Matzah Bikurym for their benefit, and here's the result if you accept his invitation, to capitalize upon it. The only reason that Dowd would go to such lengths to commend the work of a goy in the end, and it's 35 verses long, and each of them is a parallel. So there's 70 statements of Dowd setting this one individual apart, saying that this person is really important to me. And that's the reason. We were put here to resolve this problem. It's not just to reintroduce Yehudim to YAHOWAH. That's a big deal, and we've done that. It's not just to explain the terms and conditions of the covenant. Well, we did that, and that's a big deal. It's not just to illuminate the purpose and the timing of each of the Moed Mikre. We're the first to do that, and that's a big deal. It's not only to put the story together from beginning to end and to date all of these major events so that Israel knows what happened and what will happen. That's a big deal. It's not only to excoriate those who have preyed upon Israel and Dowd through Christianity and Islam and Judaism, although that's a big deal. I think our single most important aspect of our mission is to restore Dowd to the proper prominence and esteem among Israelites. That's why turning here to the 22nd Mizmor, I think, is just so appropriate as we celebrate Chag Matzah. So what's your guys' reaction to this? I mean, I've told you it makes me very somber. I'm thrilled that we finally figured it out. I'm thrilled that we're restoring the respect that Dowd has earned. I'm thrilled that we're giving Yisrael the opportunity to come home, to come clean, to receive the benefits that YAHOWAH is offering. I'm thrilled that we're making the wrongs right. But I'm still embarrassed for Israel. I'm sad for God to have endured all of this. What's your reaction to it?
Well, what would you change different that would make it more focused to get them to respect Dowd? I mean, what is there something specifically we could do more of? I don't get a lot of feedback from Jewish people, that that are hearing the message.
Yeah, I think I've shared my frustration on this a lot recently, which is that I spend half my day trying to get traction with Jews, trying to get their attention in Facebook and on X, and there just are no takers. The people who respond favorably to what we're saying about Dowd and about YAHOWAH, against Islam and against Christianity, against this love affair that almost worship that many Israelis have now for their perceived presidential messiah in Trump.
Oh God, yes.
I really expected that we would find by this time one or two influential people within those communities that would bond with YAHOWAH and Dowd and this message and would recognize this is the only way to save Israel.
They can't. But
we're still, our covenant community and myself, the wise men and women of the covenant family, we're it. We're reinforcing this. We're doing the best we can. I don't know how we could do better than what we're doing. And Jews are really a tough audience. They're just not willing to let stupid go. They're locked into Hashem and G-D and are just not even the least receptive to YAHOWAH. They are locked into a returning Messiah whose name they do not know, and not a returning, a arriving Messiah, when it's so clearly Dowd. And there's none of them that will accept Dowd as the Messiah. There's none of them that will accept Dowd as the returning king. There's none of them that will accept Dowd as the Son of God. There's none of them that will accept Dowd as the one who fulfilled Pesach, Matzah Bikurym. They don't even accept matzah.
Yeah, as far as an influential person, I think that they cease to be influential as soon as they kind of come on board with what we do here. I mean, you talk about how fast you lose followers and gain one, lose two on Twitter and that sort of thing. And most folks that are influencers, and they want to be popular. They just, whatever it takes to be popular and to get their message and their thoughts out there. They're not really concerned about what's Sadak.
They don't care what they don't care what their message is. They just they care what their audience is.
Get it? Yeah.
Yes. I realize that social media is driven by the numbers, but I am steadfastly committed to the message. So on a day that I might make 30 or 40 posts, and most of them are pretty darn insightful.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of it, I might lose 20 followers after 40 posts, and what I will do is, rather than try a different strategy, I'll go back the next day and repost every one of them. And I think it was Rich today said, I think you have like 10,000 posts now, don't you? 10,100 posts.
Feels like it.
For just over 1,000 followers on X.
Everybody take 10, hand them out to friends, right?
Oh my goodness! We can be absolutely certain that I am not going to be chastised by Yah for not putting in the effort.
Right.
No.
And I'm not the worst writer in the world, and I'm reasonably entertaining and sarcastic. And there's no one that understands Islam better than I do. There's no one that understands Christianity better than I do. There's no one that understands the nature and the mindset of what MBS and Donald Trump are going to achieve and how it's going to affect Israel, because no one understands the prophetic portrayal that's going to transpire over these next 10 days. No one knows YAHOWAH better. No one knows Dowd better. So I've got some real things to say that are pertinent to those we're trying to reach. I guess it's it would be inappropriate to be frustrated. You know why?
We know what the results are going to
Yeah.
be.
Yah's
Well,
happy.
we do know that we will eventually prevail, and our job is to convey the information and do so as thoroughly, consistently, loyally, forthrightly as possible. And what happens with that information is Yahweh's responsibility. Once we do our jobs, He's working through us, but He is working through us. So, He bears
We're holding back.
Yeah, we're not. I don't think we're holding Yahweh back. I
No,
think
no.
we are. I
We're
do
moving.
not think so. I think Yahweh's getting every bit as much out of us as He could have possibly expected.
Yeah.
But no, my point is, there was a period of time where Yahweh was present among the children of Israel,
Mhm.
a beacon of light in their midst.
Yeah.
And He spoke directly to them. And He had less effect than we're having.
Yeah.
I've had people, say some mean things to me, but I've never had anybody say, "Shut up, go away. We don't want to ever hear from you again."
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the children of Israel told Yahweh. So, He's got some skills that we don't have.
Yeah. That's tough to compete with.
You can't compete with Him.
Right.
And so, this is the reality of it, is that with God being in their presence and bringing the Messiah back to do this and then revealing all of it, here's Dowd as a prophet. He said, "This is all I'm going to do." He told him when he's going to arrive. He told him exactly what he was going to accomplish and how this would all play out. And they still ignored him. And here he is, the king of Israel, doing this, where he wrote the prophecies of how he was going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And what effect did he had? Zero.
Right.
Yeah. And yes, yeah.
So
Same
we're
way.
not going to get frustrated that it's a challenge. We're just
Right.
going to double down and keep up the work. And I choose also to say, one of the reasons I think we were chosen for this,
We stick to it.
steadfastness.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
We're not going to let
No quitters here.
the Nimrods, the idiots, the hard-headed, even the hard-headed, stubborn, politicized, militarized, religious community in Israel, and the difficulty of communicating in places particularly like X, we're not going to let them wear us down.
Yeah.
We're just going to keep on coming and keep on coming. And every day we're committed to delivering this message as forthrightly and completely and as accurately and as boldly as we can. We're going to turn on the lights. We're going to ignite the camera and make the microphones work. And here we are. And it is a joy in one way. You read as we're going to share that 14th Mizmor, we are pleasing Yahweh. And the very fact that we have the chance, and Dowd, and the very fact that we are pleasing Yahweh and Dowd, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And we know we're going to prevail in the end. So that's pretty cool. And in the process, we get to be the first to figure out some really neat stuff. Like why this started with the question about matzah. And why the first 5 lines of this were all about matzah. Even before Pesach was discussed, this is the first line of Pesach. And then why it was presented this way with the Towrah, and why it said that, I was tormented by those people, but it's the way I was rejected by my own family that hurt the most. So here we are. It's like God decided He was going to play the movie of the history of humanity, with every beautiful nuance revealed and the scene painted beautifully for us. And we're the first people to be able to see it.
Right.
We're at the audition.
Yeah. Private screening.
Yeah, the private screening with we didn't want it to be a private
No,
screening.
no. The door was left open
But
in the back.
that's what we've got so far. And I am convinced that one of these days, that one of these programs,
Go viral.
It's going to go viral.
Yeah.
It might be one of the songs, it might be one of the shorts, but something is, and it is going to resonate with some people in Israel. I know that I had talked beginning of the week, and I said, I think that something's going to happen here. That's kind of an interesting validation on Facebook that on Passover we're going to reach 2,500 friends on Facebook, and the majority of them are Jews. I mean, the overwhelming majority of those who are friends on Facebook are Jews. I mean, because I get to see how they present themselves. It's all Jewish names and even written in Hebrew. Now, we won't keep away somebody that's Goyim that wants to participate, but mostly Jews. And we're going to reach 2,500 during Passover, as Passover is extended through tomorrow when we do our additional shows on Passover tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty neat. From 90 days that we've been doing this without any advertising, 90 days to go from nothing to 2,500. That's encouraging, particularly since most of the listeners are Jewish.
Yeah, that was the whole point. So
the whole point. And I think we've created a nice family atmosphere here on Facebook that's working beautifully. Here we're live streaming, and I get to have my lamb and my matzah and my wine, and we're about to go in. I am assured that Leah's going to have a bigger plate for us than my wee little plate here, and
your taster menu there.
Yeah, and there'll be more things on it because that's just the way Leah is. But we're going to go and celebrate our Pesach dinner at this point. Leah just said, wait. I don't know what she's going to do. Maybe it's going to be lucky enough and she's going to blow the shofar for us. Maybe we'll get really lucky and she'll come on camera and blow the shofar for us. Oh, yeah, she is. Come on. Stand behind us, Leah. Okay, I'm going to scoot over this way. Leah's going to come on camera and she's going to blow the shofar. Come here, Leah. Okay.
Whoop, whoop. Is that how that goes?
Well done.
All right. Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, that's all for me.
That's a wrap.
Note, huh?
I am on that note.
Well done.
Happy Pesach.
Shabat
Matzah, everybody.
I'm delighted to go celebrate Pesach with my lovely Jewish wife and my wonderful God of Yisrael, and my good friend Rich, who is one of the wise men, as we have our covenant family here, and we're going to have a wonderful Pesach meal. We're going to enjoy Pesach tomorrow. We will be doing more shows on this. If you guys want to rejoin, you're more than welcome to do that. We're going to continue in our review of the 26th Mizmor, continuing through tomorrow and even through Bikurym. Thank you all. Have a wonderful Pesach.
Thank you.
Shabbat shalom.
Good night.
Shabbat shalom, both of you.